Okay, question 3. I will have answered some of the ones to come already, I suspect. But anyway, we'll carry on. We constantly hear about groundbreaking discoveries, inventions supposed to revolutionize our world, but humanity is still haunted by centuries-old problems like poverty, inequality, and justice. We're slowing down the progress. Who's slowing down the progress of Homo sapiens? Well, I've just described who's slowing down the progress of Homo sapiens. And it's done by, in part, persuading people that they are Homo sapiens, that they are humans. Human is not what we are, it's what we're experiencing. It's an experience for consciousness. Just like any other form or reality in the infinity of forever is another experience for consciousness. So if we get caught in the idea that we're human, that's who we are, then we will accept the limitations of being human, which is so much is not possible. But if we realize that we are consciousness, infinite awareness, having an experience as a human, well, the whole thing changes, because you are not limited by being human. You're only limited by being consciousness, and consciousness is potentially infinite if we choose to expand into the infinity of consciousness. You know, we can have a perception, a point of attention within this infinite state of awareness, the size of a pea or the size of infinity. Again, it's our perceptions that decide which of those, or anything in between, that we choose to perceive. And so the very idea that we perceive ourselves to be humans as that's what we are, and not just an experience of what we really are, consciousness, that is a massive limitation on perception to start with. And humanity is still haunted by centuries-old problems like poverty, inequality, and injustice. But that's the idea. This is the prison pen of perception that I'm talking about. Look at the whole history of humanity to the present day, and what is it? It's of a tiny few controlling the wealth, controlling the military in its various forms, controlling the perceptions that human society is supposed to conform to, and imposing that conformity. And that conformity includes creating a hierarchy in which the tiny few, they call them the 1% today, the tiny few control the wealth and the power and the military, the enforcement networks, and they hoard the wealth. And because they hoard the wealth, then there's a fraction of their wealth to actually be shared out among the population. But even then, below them, it's still a hierarchy. So built in to this whole agenda throughout human history, because this is not something new, this has been something that's going on and just moving towards its goal for centuries and thousands of years, as we perceive time. And therefore, because this hierarchy, where the few hoard the wealth, has always been there, because that's the hierarchy of control, it means that whether you're talking about centuries ago or whether you're talking about today, we still have the centuries-old problems like poverty, inequality, and injustice. It's not, you see, that the means of enslavement has changed in its basic structure. It's changed in the way we perceive it. So, for instance, you could look back and say there were times, and of course it's still going on today, but let's look back and say there were times when a religious tyranny imposed its will on the population, just as Saudi Arabia does today, and dictates what people can say, what they can't say, what they can think and what they can't think, and what opinions they can have and can't have. Now, you come all the way forward, even today among societies that have largely rejected religion as a control system and a belief system, and what you have? You have political correctness and this destruction of freedom of speech, because there's a force, the so-called progressive mentality, that's actually regressive and has hijacked the left in politics worldwide, virtually. It is now the new religion imposing the same things on the population that the old religions did centuries ago. These are the opinions you can have, these are the opinions you can't have. This is what you can say, this is what you can't say, this is what you can think, this is what you can't think. All that's changed is the presentation, the stage show. The structure and how it works has not changed. It's gone on all the way through. And until we realize this and see the structure of control and how it works, and reject it and start cooperating with it, then it will go on. And it will go on to its desired end, which is what I talked about earlier, where human awareness is no more and only AI awareness exists in this reality. In recent years, scientists often told about the simulation hypothesis, but I was writing about the simulation we live in way back when virtually no scientists, there were one or two, but they were very rare, were talking about the simulation view of human reality. Now, of course, more and more are coming out and saying, actually, it does look like this is what it is. And it is, I suggest. Question, what is your concept of so-called broader reality we exist in? Is our consciousness trapped in the matrix? Which theory about consciousness origins is most convincing to you? But I've covered this to an extent, so I won't go into it all again. But we are awareness, a state of being aware. We are a point of attention within an infinite awareness. Everything that exists is this awareness in different forms. And like I say, that point of attention could be tiny or it can be infinite. And it's our perceptions that dictate which of those it is. And to keep people on the postage stamp, their point of attention must be tiny and must be focused only within postage stamp reality. This is what happens in human society. But if you expand your awareness and your sense of the possible, then you very quickly leave the postage stamp and you start to see reality beyond it. And from that reality beyond it, you see the postage stamp reality, human society, in a completely different way. And more people are going through this process. Now, I won't go into it all here because you won't have the space for a start, but in the books, I talk about, in detail, about this simulation. Also in an all-day talk that's available at davidicke.com. It runs to 10 hours, recorded a few months ago. But if you look at the Matrix movie series, it was a very, in theme, not in every detail, but it was a very accurate portrayal of the reality that we live in. Because one of the things that has to be kept from humanity in general for the perceptual imprisonment to be possible is we have to be kept from the understanding of the very reality that we're experiencing and the nature of our own self and its relationship to that reality. So, how many people in the world realize that the world they think is so solid is not solid at all? How many people realize even further that the world they think is outside of them and they are in only exists in that form in a few centimeters at the back of the brain, where the brain decodes electrical information from the sight senses into what is holographic digital information in their own brain. There is no out there in terms of the reality we think we're experiencing. The out there is just like a cosmic version, a matrix version of Wi-Fi. They're information fields. Information fields which our perceptions dictate which of those information fields we decode into an experienced reality and which we don't. This is why the more you expand your consciousness, the more you see that you didn't see before, because you're now starting to go deeper and deeper into the information fields beyond what most humans actually decode. It's another expression of the postage stamp, a visual version this time. And we live in this sea of waveform information, just like Wi-Fi. In fact, Wi-Fi and the internet are just technological mirrors of the very reality we're experiencing. A computer will take information from the Wi-Fi field and it will decode that information into the pictures, texts, colors, images that we see on the screen, but only exist on the screen and nowhere else in that form. We, through what I call the biological computer, the human body, which itself is in its base state information fields, that decodes, if you like, cosmic Wi-Fi, as I'm calling it, into the world that we think we're experiencing outside of us. Actually, it only exists inside our head. And so the five senses, look at what they do. They take information from in waveform. Just look at the ear for a start. And they turn that information into electrical information. They communicate that electrical information, electrical version of the waveform information, to the brain and the rest of the genetic systems involved as well. And different parts of the brain specialize in decoding information from the different senses, and together the brain then forms the sense of reality that we call the world, the physical world that isn't physical. And the illusion is so powerful and so constantly self-confirming, with humans self-confirming it to each other, that it is the perceptual prison that people live in from cradle to grave. So then the question comes, who is feeding the information? Who is communicating the information in the form of those waveform fields that we are decoding into holographic, illusory, physical experiences that we call the world? Who is doing that? I say that it's being done in the same way, in theme, as the Matrix movies. We're being fed a world which is nothing more than an information source that we're decoding into a world we think we live in when it lives in us. And as you start to expand your awareness beyond the postage stamp, you start to see this. But within the frequency band of postage stamp perception, you won't see it. And that's why people think it's so crazy, because to them it is.